So besides Rooster, we do have Pete Medhurst on the line because these guys got into a fire exchange. You can go to thefandc.com to get the recap, or I just tweeted a link at Junkster Radio or at GlassJoeJP. Let's check in on Pete real quick. Pete, are you there?
Of course. Good morning.
Hey,
So,
Pedro.
Pete, I think that you, and you can characterize this, you kind of started the debate, not knowing that you were going to really get into some sort of exchange there with Chris, because you were kind of defending Dwayne Haskins and the fact that he beat Joe Burrow. Can you kind of explain how this all started?
Well, I mean, I was just bringing up the fact that at some point, college football coach of tremendous reputation and his staff, who've won far more games than they've lost, just check the record, at one point they thought he was better than Joe Burrow. So, I mean, we're sitting here after 6 games of film, trying to poke every hole in this quarterback. And I think the thing that just pushed me over the edge was the fact that, again, you know, we bring up the photo of him. He shared the photo with him and the fans that he took during the course of the game, which for those fans is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with a professional football player. And the fact that we bring it up and criticize it while it's April in the middle of a pandemic just kind of pushed me over the edge. That's all.
And Chris, you had just written a column about that, correct?
Yes. So I saw it, and of course, I probably overreact. But you know, when you're trying to stir the pot a little bit during the middle of a global pandemic, you're going to probably overreact to things. I would say this: I think I didn't even act that harshly or react that harshly last November. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was dumb. I thought it was just weird to do, but I think a lot of people were harder. To me, this bothered me even more because this almost seemed like premeditated, not caught up in the emotion of a big win and finally getting your first win as an NFL. This almost seemed like, you know, I really didn't learn anything by doing this, you know. And again, I would just say this: did he commit a crime? Absolutely not. Did he do anything horrible? Of course not. Did he do something back then and last week smart? No, and that's the biggest criticism from people that I talk to around the NFL, and I think people that were in the building last year and people that are still in the building. They're worried about this kid's maturity, and they're worried about his leadership and the way he goes about doing certain things that bother the bleep out of them.
Well, I'm sure people are worried about the maturity, but if we're talking about the comparisons with Haskins and Kyle Allen, I don't think there's a comparison. I mean, one guy was drafted in the first round, the other guy was undrafted.
Right.
Show me a quality starting quarterback in the NFL that was undrafted. I don't think you can find one.
No.
Well, hold on.
So Dwayne Haskins would be, if Dwayne Haskins lost out to Kyle Allen, that's more indicative of Haskins. That's not because Kyle Allen is quality.
Where was Kurt Warner drafted? Wasn't he undrafted?
He was. I mean, arena football and all that.
All right, so we're going back to Kurt Warner.
All right, but I'm just saying, we're making blanket statements here. We can't do this.
Well, it's 99 out of 100 starting quarterbacks in the NFL are drafted. And by the way, Kyle Allen was beat out twice, not once, but twice in college.
Right. Listen, there is no denying from a physical standpoint that Dwayne Haskins is the better quarterback. I don't think anybody would dispute that if we're just comparing side by side Kyle. And I think the debate between me and Pete got started a little bit because of that and because of, Joe Burrow, and all that, and whatever. I mean, listen, he beat out Joe Burrow in Columbus. He had a monster year. Urban Meyer's called him the greatest quarterback in Ohio State history. I wrote a column last night just saying, look, Urban Meyer can say whatever the hell he wants about what he did in Columbus, and I respect the hell out of Urban Meyer, but it doesn't mean anything on this level, right? I mean, if you look at, even Landon Collins yesterday was on First Take on ESPN. He said, look, when he's prepared, when he knows what he's doing, that's the knock. As long as he's prepared and he knows what he's doing, I think Dwayne's going to be fine. But if he approaches this year, this offseason, mentally, in terms of absorbing the system, learning, Pete was just talking during the update about this virtual whatever nonsense, and they get an extra week. all right, at least that's going to help. But if he approaches it the way he approached it last year, and I'm talking about not just in the offseason, I'm talking about in training camp, early in the regular season when he was supposed to be prepared, when he was one snap away, if he approaches it that way, and if he does things that he's done too many times, too many dumb little things, the Redskins and he are going to be in trouble, period.
Look, I think there's two separate things. You have the talent issue, and then you have the maturity issue.
Yes.
And I think the part that Chris is referring to that bothers him is the maturity issue. And I'm kind of with him on that, to be honest with you. I've said a million times it's not going to happen because he's a product of, this generation. But the best thing for him to do would be to get off social media.
Correct.
That would be the best thing for him to do, in my opinion. And Jason is a more black and white kind of guy, so I could see where Jason's coming from. Jason's just coming from, I'm just looking at it from talent. He's got more talent than that other donk. But I think what Chris is looking at is the total picture, which is the maturity. And I'm with you. He is lacking in maturity.
He's very young. He's also you have to semi give him a pass for being a young guy thrust into a weird situation with a flux in the coaching staff. Jay Gruden on his way out. I'm going to give him a slight pass for being 22, kind of being overwhelmed by it. I think you're going to see a more mature Haskins coming into year two. I think he's going to look at those mistakes, and he's going to improve on them, and he's going to grow from that.
Yeah, you guys both make great points, Eric and Cakes. I would say this. There is no denying that I think he's going to be better at a lot of things this year. Again, this is not he can't do it, not he's not going to do it. This is the concern that many people have that I've spoken to. Now, maybe people are speaking to different people. I have no idea. I can only control who I talk to and people that I know are tapped in. I would just bring this up as a reminder, right? You absolutely he's going to be more mature in year two than he was in year one. They need him to be more 32 than 22 or somewhere in that. Ron Rivera is no nonsense, fellas. I think we all know that right now.
Right.
You are not going to be pinching nipples and screwing around and hopping on Jay Gruden or Ron Rivera's back like people used to do to Jay Gruden. That's not going to work here. That's not going to work. And Ron is on social media too. But Ron uses social media not to, not to promote his clothing line, to promote his charitable appearances and all that stuff, I mean, this is stuff that bothers NFL people. And maybe I'm making a big deal out of it. I don't know. I hope the kid's going to be okay. He was my favorite quarterback in the draft. But I got to admit, I underestimated how mature he was. It was something that bothered Urban Meyer, for crying out loud. We talk about Urban Meyer being so, committed to Dwayne being the best quarterback in Ohio State history. Urban was pissed a little bit, from what I understand, about his maturity, about his decision to leave Columbus, all of that. There were things there that maybe are normal for a 21, 22-year-old, but that are still there that Dwayne has to prove are not a big part of his lifestyle.
Yeah, but Chris, look, any 21 or 22-year-old that knows he's going to be a first-round draft pick, is going to leave Columbus, they're going to leave Tuscaloosa, They're going to leave wherever so they can go get the paycheck. Second of all, if I've got a clothing line, I'm going to use social media to promote it because that's what social media is for. And not only that, I'm not even sure if Ron Rivera and Dwayne Haskins have even had so much as a handshake yet. Let's give the two a chance to get to know each other a little bit before we start, hammering on Dwayne Haskins. He's probably, I'm sure he's the first one to know that the moment he took that picture last year and the fallout from it was clearly not the right thing to do in that moment in time. But the fact that we're still going to bang on him for it in April in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to sit here and talk about all the maturity issues over and over and over again before he even has a chance to get to know his new offensive coordinator and his new head coach. If he does the same foolish stuff in September, October, November, then yes, he's played his way into that. But we're still, as I said the other day, we're holding this guy accountable in April for stuff back in October and November.
But he brought it up himself, though, right? He's bringing it up on himself. I kind of agree with Chris, I think. Because he put that picture back out there, right?
But wait, in April, what's the problem with doing that in April in the middle of a pandemic, Eric?
Well, the problem is just
that's got nothing to do with football right now. They're not doing anything. He's not doing that. He's not doing that. He can't even get a playbook yet. It's not like he's taking.
Yeah, but why retweet that picture of the 9 million pictures he took last year? Why retweet that one? That was the one. You're right. You're right.
Who cares? It's April. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're all sitting in our house.
In my opinion, that's bad judgment. Doesn't mean he can't play. But it's just bad judgment. That wasn't a picture that was a great look for him. In fact, I would argue that was one of the more embarrassing things he's ever done.
I would just add this. I mean, I understand where Pete's coming from. EB, it seems is like me and you are more on the same page. I don't know the rest of the guys. But I would say this. There are people that thought very what's the right word? That didn't think very highly of a lot of these different things that we're talking about that are now gone. But Kyle Smith is still there. And I can't help but every single conversation I've had with somebody since January when Ron Rivera and Scott Turner took over, and everything they've said on the record, and I would say to some degree off, but not really off, they've said it on the record. They're unsure of him. They like him. They're not totally committed to him. They don't – I would say this. They like him. They don't love him, and they're not sure of him.
They don't know him.
Well, that's part of it. But they're
looking at film. They're probably basing it on film, too.
Yes, but remember, people in the building are still part of this administration. They saw every day. NFL coaches go by people that they trust and they respect, and people are still there, right? Coaches, a couple, and Kyle Smith are still there and very much a part of this administration. And Kyle was very closely aligned with Jay Gruden. I'll just leave it at that. You infer whatever you want from that. Kyle was very, very closely aligned with Jay Gruden.
Well, that makes sense. And I've said this a number of times, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if Rivera and that coaching staff and Kyle Smith and all those guys are still unsure of Dwayne, okay, and Tua's coming out, and he's sitting there at number 2 for you, and he's one of the best prospects to come out in the last, 10, 15 years, all right, injury aside, I think you got to take him. And then
the only thing I would counter with that is and you're right, Jason, the massive injury history, which I've been barking about for 3 months, which now all of a sudden everybody cares about. That's the problem with that.
Well, you got to clear that up.
What did Lombardi? I saw Lombardi
But if you have Tua rated much higher than Dwayne, all right, and you're here for 3, 4, 5 years, if you're Rivera, and you think you can win more games with Tua, I don't know how you can let him slip past number 2.
Lombardi said he failed 2 physicals, right? And then I don't remember seeing I didn't click on it. I just remember seeing that.
Yeah,
it
2
surprised
physicals
me.
in the top 10, and Lombardi added a broken wrist that was re-broken apparently as soon as he came in. I've never
Is that
heard
his throwing wrist?
I don't know that, and also some people have disputed that he actually had a broken wrist. I have never heard the broken wrist thing, and Lombardi, I talked to him after he came out with that, and he stands by that. That's what he was told. I don't know.
You got to ask him if it's a throwing wrist.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Even without that, he's got 2 ankle problems, a knee problem, a quad problem, a broken finger, and the hip. So,
right,
so that's a half dozen. I mean,
true.
That's a half dozen documented. We know some minor, some whatever. But this is my thing. Tua is a better quarterback, I believe, and a leader, and all of, and more mature than Dwayne. All of that stuff. So I think if you're just arguing one versus one, absolutely. To Jason's point, you probably take Tua if you're a new staff and you're not married to Dwayne. However, if you're taking that dude at number 2 with his injury history at a position where you're going on, at some point this year, you're going to start a 7th quarterback. Since Kirk Cousins, you let him walk out the door, meaning the old administration, this organization, a 7th quarterback you're going to start at some point this year if Kyle Allen starts a game, one game. So you can't go into, in my opinion, with an approach of, yeah, we're going to get him right. He's going to be fine as long as we can keep him healthy. Of course he's the better quarterback as long as you can keep him healthy. The problem is how do you keep him healthy?
Right. If it wasn't for the health concern, I think they'd take him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
they would take him.
Rooster, we got to run.
All right, thank you guys.
Pete
Appreciate you.
Medhurst.
Thank you, Pete.
Awesome
Thanks,
to hear
Pete.
your voice, too.
Good
All
morning.
right. Thank
All
you,
right, bro.
buddy.
By the way, I'm on Team Pete. I don't think it's a big deal to post a selfie picture.
I don't think it's a great look for him.
It's not a great
Not a
look,
great look,
especially
but-
one that was so controversial at the time.
It's very polarizing.
I mean, why would you re-bring that topic up? Like,
I just think it's a non-issue, really, in the
well,
grand
you're
scheme
more
of
black and
things.
white. You're like Jason. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't think psychology. You don't think a lot of those things matter.
I don't think it matters. I'm just assuming he will get more mature in the next couple years.
Yeah,
If
he needs to get
doesn't-
more mature in like the first 6 games.
Well,
You know.
I'm just saying that if this staff really has
Yeah.
a lot of questions about Haskins, and I'm sure they've talked about it with Snyder,
I think they do.
then you seriously have to consider Tua if you are not afraid of the physical.
Right.